Hello bookish people, welcome back to my channel. My name is Megan. In today's video we are going to be talking about the most unhinged books I have ever read in my entire life. These are the craziest, the wildest, the most bananas books. The plot is crazy, the characters are crazy, all around is a crazy time. Now, not all these books are necessarily like recommendations. Like some of them I'm like, oh my god, these are so crazy and disturbing. Like I do not recommend that you read them, but we're just going to talk about all of them. I have about, I don't even know, 15, 20 books here. I didn't count, but it's a huge stack. We're going to talk about them, and we have everything from slightly unhinged to completely off the rails unhinged. Hope you guys enjoy, so let's get into the books. Starting off light, easing you into it, we're going to start with the YA series, and this is by far the craziest YA series I have ever read in my entire life, and that is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder trilogy by Holly Jackson. And as they go on, they get progressively more and more crazy, ending with this book, which is probably the most unhinged YA book I have ever read in my entire life. The things that happen in this book, I was like, wait, this is YA? I have never seen YA go in this direction before, and this is a YA book I will never forget. We start in book one with Pip, who is a true crime enthusiast, and for her senior capstone project, she chooses a crime that happened in her small town, a murder-suicide that happened a couple of years ago, and she is on the case to investigate because she doesn't think what the police said happened really happened, and she investigates it, and then that leads us into book two, where she is solving a current crime that's happening in her small town, and then we can lead into book three, which I'm going to say nothing, so I don't want to give away any spoilers. This next book is on here because you simply cannot have a list of unhinged books without mentioning this one, and that is Bunny by Moto and Wad. So in this book, you are following our main character, Samantha Heather Mackey Smacky, and she goes to Warren University, which is like this writing university, or it's not a writing university, but she's in this writing section of the university because she's trying to be an author. And then there's these girls, the popular, the pretty girls that are all in their little clique, and they all call each other Bunny. They're like,
hey Bunny, hi Bunny, how was your weekend Bunny? Oh, you know Bunny, because I was with you Bunny.
So it's about Samantha. She sees this group, she judges them from afar, but then they bring her into her group and she gets immersed into the bunny world, and I am just like obsessed. I'm obsessed. I am obsessed. I rated this book 5 stars, and I definitely want to do a reread of it. The cover, gorgeous. You open the cover and there's literally freaking axes and hot pink. This book I describe as girly horror, and like I'm here for it, and I need more girly horror recommendations. So if you have any girly horror recommendations, drop them in the comments. The next book we're going to talk about, I don't own a physical copy, but it's a Look What You Made Me Do by Elaine Murphy. The best way for me to describe this book is if Finley Donovan had a serial killer sister. In this book, you were following two sisters. One's a serial killer, and the other one is not a serial killer, but she knows her sister is one, and her sister kind of like forces her to help her cover up the murders and hide the bodies. So it's just about this girl trying to live a normal life, trying to have a normal relationship, and then her sister calls her up once a year and is like, hey, help me hide this body, and she's like, oh my god, not again. And then they get into a cat and mouse game with another local serial killer, and it is just chef's kiss amazing, so much fun. The reason it gives me Finley Donovan vibes is because it's like crazy and unhinged and like a crazy storyline and obviously serious topics, but there's humor in it and it has like a lighthearted vibe to it, even though it does get a little graphic in the end, but like it's such a good time. I highly recommend it, and it is so underrated because nobody talks about it. This is the sequel to it, which I have not read yet, but I'm hoping to read this year. Speaking of Finley Donovan, the next book is Finley Donovan Knocks Him... That is the second book. Finley Donovan is Killing It by El Casamato. Finley Donovan Knocks Him Dead is the second book in the series, and although I'm just showing you the first book, I recommend all the books in the series, including the third book, which I know is controversial because a lot of people did not like the third book, but I was a fan. In this book, you're following our main character, Finley, and she just recently went through a divorce with a cheater husband. She is now a single mom to 2, and she is also a writer, which means she's broke because she's not a very successful writer, and she meets with her agent in Panera, and she starts talking about the plot to her book, which is like a murder mystery book. So she talks about the bad guys and saving the girl, and one lady overhears her conversation and mistakes her for an assassin and leaves a note basically in her purse saying, if you kill my husband, I will give you $50,000. And Finley's like, oh, like I need the money, but I can't kill anybody. But the dominoes fall, crazy shit happens, one thing after another, and it is so much fun. I can't even tell you. I read this book twice, and I loved every moment of it the first time and the second time, and I just highly recommend this book. I rated it 5 stars. The next book we're going to talk about is one of my favorite books I feel like I don't hear too much about. Maybe we'll hear more about it in fall time, and that is A Jackal by Arian E. Adams. This was a 2022 release, and it was amazing. So if you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend you read this one. In this book, you're following our main character, Liz, who is a black woman who is from a predominantly white small town in Pennsylvania. And of course, when she's an adult, she's like, get me out of this racist small town and she lives her life. But then she's called back to the small town by her best friend who is getting married on a plantation in the woods. And Liz doesn't want to go for multiple reasons. One, she's like, I don't like that town. I don't want to go back there. But more specifically, I do not want to go to this plantation in the middle of the woods because the woods is a dangerous place for Black girls in this town, because every year a Black girl goes missing in the woods in this town and nobody can figure out what's happened to them. So during the wedding, she's at one of the little girls, and of course a little Black girl goes in the woods and she goes missing, and Liz takes it upon herself to investigate the case and figure out what is going on. And this book is very like mystery thriller-esque, right? Like I wouldn't say it's completely crazy until the ending. The only reason this book is in this like unhinged like video is because the ending is completely insane, and I listened to the audiobook and the ending was so crazy for me. I had to buy the physical copy so I could reread the ending, so I was like, I need to visualize this with my eyeballs because this was so crazy. Like I just needed to read it to comprehend what happened. If you're like the movie Get Out, this book is definitely for you. The next book we're going to talk about is a more recent read of mine, and that is The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz. And this book was absolutely insane. So in this book, you're following our main character Alex, who is an aspiring writer, but she's kind of stuck in a dead-end job. But her favorite female horror novelist hosts a writing retreat every year where she brings a bunch of women together to write novels, and she'll pick the best one and she will help you publish your novel. And when Rosa publishes your novel, you basically have instant success, instant fame. When Alex arrives at this writing retreat, she sees her ex-best friend there, and they have a lot of tension going on. And is Rosa all she seems to be? It is just such a crazy fun time. Like I can't tell you anything about why this is unhinged without giving away spoilers, but the last half of this book completely like went off the rails. I know there was criticism of this book because of how it went completely off the rails at the end of this book, but like for me, I was here for it. I was loving it. I was entertained and I was shocked, and that's really all I'm asking for from a mystery thriller. So I highly recommend this one. This one I recommend more in the winter time because there's like a snowstorm, so it definitely gives you more winter vibes. Even if you wanted to read it in the summer, you're gonna have a fun time with it. The next book we're gonna talk about is My Lovely Wife by Samantha Downing. If you love serial killers, you'll love this book. Love serial killers, that's a weird way to phrase it, but like if you love serial killer based stories, then you'll love this book. So you're following this couple. They are an old married couple, and they are in their old married couple ways, and they are bored in their marriage. And they're like,
how do we spice things up? Oh, I know, let's become serial killers.
So it's about this couple who is a serial killing couple, but they have kids, they have a family. This book you're definitely reading right from a villain's perspective, but like I love it, right? It's so much fun, and I would just highly recommend it. Samantha Downing has another book coming out in 2023 that I cannot wait to read. I actually think it comes out in July. I can't wait to read it because it's about another toxic killing couple, and there's nothing better than a toxic killing couple in a mystery thriller. The next books we're going to talk about, the next two books we're going to talk about specifically, are the most disturbing books I have ever read in my entire life, and I don't even know that they're on this list to necessarily recommend them to you, or just because I created a list of unhinged books, like I could not include these, because I wasn't mad at these books, but they're completely disturbing, and definitely check trigger warnings before reading these books, and I'm not responsible for how you feel after reading these books. That's all I'm gonna say. The first book we're gonna mention is Good Me, Bad Me by Allie Land. In this book, we are following our main character, Millie, who is a teenager, and her mother is a serial killer, and Millie is the one who turned her mother in for being a serial killer to the police, and now she's kind of like in witness protection. No, she's not in witness protection because her mother's in jail, but she has changed her name and she is testifying at the trial anonymously, and obviously she needs somewhere to live because her mother's in jail, so she lives with her psychiatrist, and he's helping her like through all her issues, dealing with the trauma of what she went through with her mother, and she's also trying to start a new life, and the psychiatrist has another teenage daughter who is completely a bitch, and this book was so disturbing, like so intriguing, right? Like I was invested in every moment of this book, but like disturbing. Some of the things are very graphic, and definitely so many trigger warnings for this book. Read this book and don't judge me for showing it in this video. This next book I bought because it was turned into a Netflix movie starring Mila Kunis, and I was like, I want to watch it. I thrifted the book, I read it, and this was the most disturbing book I ever read. And after I read this book, I was genuinely shocked that anybody would want to adapt this into a film. And the film was just as disturbing as this book was. So when I tell you this has triggering topics on it, I especially mean that it has triggering topics. We have violence against women, and then we have mass gun violence in this book. So if any of those things are extremely triggering to you, as they were to me, like reading this book made me so uncomfortable, I only rated it 3 stars. And that is Luckiest Girl Alive by Jessica Knoll. In this book, you're following our main character, and she is an adult now. She has kind of moved on from the traumatic things that happened in her past as a teenager, and then a reporter comes to do a story or a documentary on the things that happened in her past, and it's about her just kind of recounting all that, and it's just, it's so It's so disturbing. I don't even know that I recommend it. I only rated it 3 stars. It's literally on here because it's one of the craziest books I ever read. So like I cannot make a list of crazy books and not include the craziest book I've ever read. But it's not a fun crazy. It's a deeply disturbing crazy, and it is shocking to me that Netflix would make this into a movie. The next book on this list is The Chain by Adrienne McKenty. I absolutely devoured and loved this book so much. In this book, you are following our main character. I believe her name is Rachel, but it's been a while since I read it. Rachel, guys, the fact that I could remember her name just shows you how much I enjoyed this book, because I am so bad at remembering character names, like so bad, especially when I'm a couple months removed from the book. In this book, you are following our main character, Rachel, and she gets a phone call one day basically saying, hey, I've kidnapped your daughter. If you want your daughter back, pay me like $10,000 and go kidnap another kid. And you can't release that other kid to the parents until they pay you $10,000 and they kidnap another kid. So again, it is a chain cycle, hence the name of The Chain, right? It's a cycle, it's a chain reaction. It's like a chain link email where it's like, you must forward it on. That's basically this, but with kidnapping. So this criminal organization is getting all these innocent people to kidnap other people's kids and give them money so this organization gets super rich. It was so compelling and interesting and intriguing, and you just kept wanting to turn the page to figure out what was going to happen next. There is a small lull in the middle of the book when you're transitioning kind of like from the part 1 of the book to part 2 of the book, but once we get invested into the part 2 storyline, it is also unhinged and crazy as well. And I don't want to say more than that because again, I don't want to give away spoilers. I want to leave you intrigued enough to pick up this book. This author has another book called The Island, which is right there, that I also highly recommend, but it's not in here because I wouldn't describe it as unhinged. I would just describe The Island as action-packed, but this one, unhinged, crazy, and what would a parent do to get their kid back is really the premise of this book. The next book we're going to talk about is The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelis. In this book, we're following our main character, Theo, who is a psychotherapist, and he goes to this facility where this one lady is being held, and she has been found guilty of killing her husband, but instead of going to jail, they sent her to a psychiatric hospital because she is obviously mentally unwell, and while she is there, she does not utter one word. She does not speak. And he is very intrigued by this patient, and he just wants to get to know her and get her to start speaking again and figure out why she did what she did. That is why it's called The Silent Patient, because she doesn't talk. I would definitely say this book had a kind of a slower start to it, but once you really get into this book, yeah, it gets unhinged, it gets crazy, and I wouldn't even necessarily say on the face of this book it is unhinged. I feel like you only recognize it as an unhinged crazy book once you get to the plot twist of the story, and then you reflect back and you're like, oh my god, like it's just one of those twists that just like shell shocks you. Now, I will say I have seen a lot of people who've said, oh, I predicted the ending to this book. Well, I did not. I did not predict the ending to this book, and if you are one of those people who does not predict the ending to this book, then I think you'll really like it. But if you are one of those people who's reading it and you're predicting the ending and you turn out to be right, yeah, I could see why you didn't like it as much, but I was utterly shocked by it, so I highly recommend it. I recommend it to the people who aren't going to predict the ending, but how do you know if you're going to be that person or not until you read it? I don't know. The next book we're going to talk about is by one of my favorite authors, but it is his lowest rated book out of all of his books, and I rated it 4 stars. So what does that say about me? I don't know. But it is Survive the Night by Riley Sager. In this book, you are following our main character, and she needs to get back home for like Christmas break, Thanksgiving break. I don't remember why. Maybe it's even summer break, but she needs to get home. She doesn't have a car, and this guy on campus is going to the same destination as her, so she gets in the car with him. She has no idea who he is, and they just go on this road trip together, but while she's in the car with him, she's like, wait, is he who he says he is? And this book is just so much fun, and it's fun in the sense that it's bad, right? Like the main character in this book, she is so dumb. Like she makes so many stupid decisions in this book, but that's what made it entertaining to me. And I know that's like what a lot of people's criticism of this book is, like the character was unbelievably stupid, but because I was invested in the story, like when she was making a dumb decision, I'd be like,
Oh my god, why did you do that?
right? But like because she made me feel that way and I was like actually invested in wanting to scream at my book, it's like part of the reason why I liked it, because I just like had a fun time. It was like watching a bad horror movie, like a bad Lifetime movie, and I'm not gonna say this is like the most amazing literature you're ever gonna like read, but it was a good time for me. And if the stupid character compels you and just makes you want to scream at your book and you find that fun, then you'll like this book. The next book is also a Riley Sager book, and that is The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. This book was so good. This was the first Riley Sager book I have ever read in my entire life, and I was utterly shocked by this book. When we get to the twist of this book, like when I tell you my jaw was on the floor, my jaw was like, Like, that just happened in this book right now. In this book, you were following our main character, and she is like middle-aged, she's an alcoholic, and she is just kind of like not doing so well in her career. She's like a Broadway performer, but her husband died, and ever since she has not been doing so well. But she goes to her lake house and she befriends the lady across the lake from her, who is this like model actress. She has a rich husband, and she starts kind of spying on them through the window, and then one night she sees them arguing, and then the lady's missing, and she thinks that the husband did something to her, and she wants to prove it. The plot twist of this book, when I tell you my jaw was on the floor, my jaw was on the floor. It was unhinged, it was crazy, it was bananas, it was wild, and I'm like obsessed. Like, I cannot even tell you how much I love this book. I rated it 5 stars. I probably would have rated it higher, which is so funny because like booktubers I really like read this book and they were like, I hate this book, but I'm like, I'm just a simple-minded girl, and I ate up every moment of it. The next book we're going to talk about is A Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. This book is absolutely insane, bananas, unhinged, like especially the ending, the action-packed scene at the end is just like, that's why it's on this list. But overall, the whole plot is crazy, and I'm absolutely obsessed with this book. So in this book, you are following our main character, and she is just a housewife. It takes place in the late 80s, early 90s. Her and her other housewife friends have this book club. But then James Harris moves into the neighborhoods. The ladies and their husbands befriend him. He's mysterious, and he is single. And they were like, is this man who he says he is? And then these children on the other side of town, in the poor side of town, start to go missing. And our main character is like, hey, is there something connected here to this guy showing up in town and these kids going missing? This book was so addictive. It was so fun. I literally never wanted to shut off the audiobook. I listened to this book on a road trip, and I was like not even wanting to get out of the car when I got to my destination, because I was like, wait, but like the book's not over yet. My mom, my friends, they know I'm driving, so they want to call me, right? Because they don't want me to be bored in the car driving on this road trip by myself. But like, I did not want to answer anybody's phone call because all I wanted to do was listen to this book. So yeah, I was utterly addicted. It was so great, so fast paced, and just an amazing time. The next book we're going to talk about, I'm kind of sad for ending on this book because this actually was not even a favorite book. I should have planned this better and ended with a 5-star book, because this book I rated it 2 stars. But take my opinion with a grain of salt, because I know a lot of people really did enjoy this book. This book is unhinged and insane, and that is How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. So in this book, you're following our main character Louise, and her parents have recently died, so she goes back to her hometown, to her parents' house where her brother lived with them, and they want to sell the house. Although there is some conflicts between who wants to sell the house and who doesn't want to sell the house, but the more time Louise spends in this house, the more and more crazy batshit things start happening in the house, and this book is insane. And Grady Hendrix just knows how to write in unhinged books, and honestly, more of his books would probably be in this video if I have read more of his books. And if you're looking at the background of my books and you're like, Megan, like some of these books over here are unhinged, why aren't they in your video? Well, I haven't read them yet. Okay, like these are the most unhinged that I have read. Anyone that you think is unhinged in my background, I probably haven't read it yet because I have a huge physical TBR. But yeah, this book, I rated it 2 stars. I wasn't personally invested in it, but again, take that with a grain of salt if you are a horror fan, and especially if you like puppets. That's all I'm going to say on that one. You'll probably like this book. So that is all the most unhinged books I have ever read in my entire life. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully you got some fun recommendations and also some books to steer clear of. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!